Welcome to the Empowered Working Mom Revolution podcast, the ultimate destination for all you incredible working moms out there.
Hey there, I'm your host, Jocelyn Aoyoung, a certified life coach dedicated to guiding moms to build successful careers while being present parents. This show is your guide to creating transformational change in you as a working mom, where you'll discover your own empowering, actionable tips and tools, and we'll dive into inspiring stories and topics such as nurturing your well-being, setting boundaries, managing time effectively, and cultivating self-compassion. So join me here every Wednesday as we revolutionize how you show up as a working mom, which makes remarkable changes in yourself, your family, your career, and the world around you. So remember to hit that subscribe button and let's go on this transformative journey together.
Welcome to the Empowered Working Mom Revolution podcast. Are you ready? Let's dive in.
Hey there, working moms. Let's create your best year in career and parenting. Picture a year where your career growth is booming, your kids want to spend their free time hanging out with you, and you're going on unforgettable family vacations together. I mean, wouldn't that be great if that became your reality? Well, I'm here to say that it can be. And I'm so excited because I want to invite you to join us for the fun Mommy Fest Your Best Year workshop on January 20th, where we're going to have fun creating what you desire and bring it into your life as a working mom. This workshop is open for 6 people because that is the amount of seats I have in my home, which is where I'm hosting this amazing in-person workshop. So if you'd like to learn more and snag your spot, go to empoweredworkingmomrevolution.com/events to sign up. All right. Hope to see you there at the Mommy Fest Your Best Year workshop. All right. Hey, y'all. Welcome to another episode on the Empowered Working Mom Revolution. We are diving into this topic of, let's call it the disease to please. And I have my really good friend here, Shobna. If you have been following the podcast, she was in season 1 of the previously named podcast, Jamming with Jocelyn. And she is back with us here today. And we're going to dive into how does people pleasing, the disease to please, impact us as working moms and career moms in all facets of our life, right? And like where that stemmed from, how does it impact our way of showing up in our career, in our workplace, and also in our parenting and with our kids. So welcome to the show. Well, welcome back, Shobna. Thank you for being here again.
Jocelyn, it's always so fun to hang out with you. And I'm so happy to be back in the new, renamed season 2 of Empowered
Working Mom Revolution.
Exactly. So I'm so glad to be back in the new season and season 2 of Empowered Working Moms Revolution. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks. And I want to give everyone a background of how this conversation came up. Is because Shobna and I were like texting each other back on Instagram. We share things with each other. And she shared, I think it was a reel. Was it a Instagram reel?
A reel with Oprah.
With Oprah, where Oprah talks about the disease to please. And we both totally resonate with that. And so we're like, let's talk about it in the context of being a working mom. So I'd love to hear from you, Shobna, like, where did you, in reflection as an adult, like, where did that people pleasing stem from? If you think about like back to your childhood or just experiences where now looking back, you notice, oh, that's where I developed that habit or that behavior.
Sure. Actually, before we get into that, I think you very eloquently put how we shared, reels and all of that for our personal development. But in all honesty, when I shared that with you, in my head, what was going through my head was, holy crap, this is still a thing. And now Oprah's talking about it.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
And that kind of shocked me because, well, it kind of shocked me and it kind of didn't. I'm like, it is quite a deep conditioning that is very difficult for us to recognize and separate because sometimes, we all have that desire to be liked.
Yeah.
We all have the desire to be happy in the environment that we are in. And sometimes we think that that responsibility falls under the fact that we need to do things so that we are liked.
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so back to your question about how this, where this stems from. For me, I think I equated this with love and care
Mm.
and
Mm.
and also the desire to be liked. So
Mhm.
if you were to do something to please somebody because they asked for it, you would be rewarded with attention, love, and care.
Mhm.
So that whole concept of being brought up in like a Asian community and Asian background is the fact that if you listen to your parents,
Mhm.
you will be rewarded.
Yeah.
If
So
you
true.
don't, you will be reprimanded. So
Mm.
with that sort of mentality and that sort of upbringing, I very quickly made the connection that if I do something that is asked of me, I generally get a very favorable response. And so that's how I brought that into my work environment. That's how I brought that into, schooling environment where like you would even do that for friends. Because if they
Mhm.
ask something of you, but you don't really want to do it, but you know that if you don't, you know, they might not like you anymore. So then you do.
Yeah.
Because at that point, you're not really familiar with what you actually stand for. And you might not even have the courage to say no.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where it stemmed for me.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You know what I noticed in what you shared there is one, you know, I appreciate the reason of what stood out to you in that Instagram reel with Oprah. And what I heard there was almost as like, it's very nuanced. Like, it's like, wow, this is still happening, that Oprah's talking about it. And two, it's also affirming in a way, it's like, oh, it's like you kind of feel seen, like you
Validated.
validated that um you experience that, right? Or you engage in that disease sequence. And there's no judgment or
Absolutely.
or shame or anything on that, but it's like I'll try to link it in the show notes for
Sure.
everyone
Yeah.
to watch it, but
Mhm.
it's one of those, as I was listening to you share what stood out to you, it's like, oh, there's two things I'm hearing here. It's like it's almost a recognition of the behavior that still is prevalent in society and in a lot of people, right? And that there is a path out or
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, there
Mhm.
is a path out. And also, I think the fact that the way she said it, for me, I still believe, sorry, for me, I believe in coaching. I believe in mentorship and all these people. I'm still growing. So for me, for the fact that Oprah said that she went through it, I'm like, okay, I don't feel so bad now. Right? Because you kind of beat yourself up about it once you realize you've been doing it for so long. And once you're on the side, sometimes you're like, you know what? I cannot believe I did that for so long.
Mhm.
However, I would like to take responsibility of the fact that this was what was going on in my head. It was maybe it wasn't the intention of whoever was doing it, but it was whatever was in my head. And this is how I interpreted that, right?
Yes. Mhm. Yeah.
So that was then. And I think that's the power of growth. Even if you don't know that as a kid, as a mom now, I'm very aware and I'm very cognizant of what is it that I do, how I do it, how I communicate with my kid to make sure he understands that the love that I have for him is in fact unconditional.
That's powerful right there.
No
Yeah.
matter what nonsense he's trying to pull, and no matter what little like, right? Because all kids do
Y
things,
yeah.
and sometimes they just don't listen because now he's a teenager, so he's at that age going, I think I actually know better.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
So in that instance, I remember when I thought that way, I was shut down. So now I'm like, what can I do to empower that thinking?
Mhm. Yeah. I love how you said earlier, it's how you interpreted the experience growing up.
Yeah.
Because I think the first thing for me is easy to blame.
Yes.
It's easy to blame and easy to fall into the victim mentality,
Yes.
right?
And
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, I did that too.
Yeah, I did that too. Same.
I did that too. And then I was
Yeah.
like, hold on, two is required here to tango. So
Mhm.
what is my part in this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you said something really interesting also I caught was, you know, as a kid, you're learning along the way, right? And so there is no
Yes.
need to self-judge or self-shame because you are learning on the way. You don't know what you don't know, right?
Yes.
You
Yes.
don't know what you don't know because yes, like coming from the Asian culture, same thing. Like I did things because it felt like I belonged and I received love, right? I love how you said that. It's about love and care, right?
Yeah.
And that's no fault of my parents. That's how
No.
that's how I perceived the situation. And also with friends, it's like I just want to belong and not be casted out, right? So
No, and then you have grown women like us going like, you know what? I just want to be liked.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I put that in front of how I actually feel about that situation. Like that's the
Ooh.
mindset, right? I would rather go against my values and who I am and what my opinion is of this situation than displease you.
Mm. Can you give like concrete examples of how that has played out in like your work, in the career, and the work that you have done?
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, for example, at work, as a leader,
Mhm.
or even an emerging leader, but for me, it was more of when I was maybe an emerging leader where I really wanted to have the team like me as a
Mm.
new leader, right? And as
Mhm.
a woman in the workplace, this was like in the tech industry, and I was, being promoted pretty quickly because things were moving quickly. It wasn't just me, everyone. Like everyone, every 6 months, we all had a new title and we were all doing different things because
Yeah.
things were moving that quickly. So in that role, I was like, oh my goodness, I have 10 people under my team now. I felt great. But then when the actual responsibility started coming my way, I realized that there was a little bit of a little bit of shake up like happening within the team because decisions that I would make would not please everybody.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
so there's this underlying, stress and underlying sort of resentment that started building. And I was young. I didn't know what was going on in us. And so I basically stepped into those emotions at that time, going like, what part of this decision, were you upset about? How could I help? What can I do? So I was going above and beyond not only my professional boundaries, but my personal boundaries to make sure that people liked me.
Wow.
And it wasn't really to my advantage at all. In fact, you might you might consider I wasn't even considering what was the repercussions for the company or the decisions that were made for the actual organization. This was just all centered around the fact that I needed to please the people that was directly reporting to me.
Mhm. Yeah.
So what happened was when some of those decisions were affected, I then got pulled into review going, why was this decision made? And I could not give a solid argument because I actually had no real reasons other than the fact that this person didn't like the decision, so I changed it so that they would.
Wow.
Right? I was very
Mhm.
young. I was in my early 20s, my first job. And I think that was the turning point for me to kind of start looking at the bigger picture as to what this actually looks like for not only my team, but like the other teams that dependent on the work that we did, plus the organization as a whole, and what leadership means. And that's when I realized that communication was something that we really needed to pay attention to. And it wasn't really about being liked anymore, but it was really finding out why you're doing what you're doing, having the values align with not only yourself, the company, and also communicating that to the team.
So that allowed like having clarity around the bigger picture, the purpose.
Yes.
You put the people pleasing tendency behind, like not in front now. I see it's like it almost shifted. Like knowing the objective and how to communicate is most important, and what's most important for your work. That became first.
That became first. But you know
Mhm.
what, though? It was very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I'm like,
It was,
what was that
yeah.
like?
Oh my God. It was extremely uncomfortable for a while, I think for at least about 6 months or so, until I realized that, and at that time, this was about 20 years ago, but you would still be labeled all things like she's bossy, she's this, she's that. I mean, it's taken 20 years for us to even be on LinkedIn right now going, okay, I'm not really bossy, I am the boss. But at
Mhm.
that time, we didn't have that language.
Yeah.
We didn't have LinkedIn. I
No, we
don't
didn't have
know. I
LinkedIn.
don't know. I can't remember. But you know what I mean? Like it was just a very different time for a woman and a woman of color to be in a position like that and not be recognized as a leader, but
Mhm.
more of the fact then, she's just changing her mind all the time because she's a woman.
Mm.
So it was very uncomfortable for me to figure out how to get past the people pleasing and really focus on what was better for the team as a whole. I think that's when I realized like I could not walk away from difficult conversations.
Ooh.
So this kind of
Yeah.
ties in a few different ways of being, because there's a lot of discomfort in trying to figure out how not to people please, and it pulls other strings along with it. And one of them is like, oh my god, am I going to avoid these conversations? Because if you do, what's the repercussions of that in a workplace?
Mm. Yeah, you're saying it's like being comfortable with the discomfort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that itself is a journey.
Yeah. And there's always, I hear you say, no matter what, there is repercussions, right? Whether you people please or even go in, go into uncomfortable conversations. But
Absolutely.
it comes back to, as I'm thinking, like thinking about what you said, it's like, what is the bigger picture here that we're trying to achieve?
Yeah.
Who are we serving here?
That's it.
Right.
Who are we serving? You nailed it. Who are we serving? So
Mm.
I think at that point, sure, I was in a very, very early stage of my career when I had that lesson kind of thrown at me really quickly. But I put the value I put the value in the wrong things. I
Mm.
valued the wrong things. I think that was one of the biggest wake up calls for me about people pleasing. Because the more I recognize that, and it's a trap I've fallen into in and out, like again and again over the course of 15, 20 years.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, not to say that that was the defining moment that shifted everything for me, but it was defining at that time in that job, because it
Mm.
comes up in different ways
Yeah.
sometimes, and you're not able to recognize, going like, oh, it's still in there because it's something you went through as a child. So it's almost like programmed. And every time you put yourself in a new environment, it's like a reset.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm also questioning is like with each experience you've had where you've noticed you engaged in the people pleasing, how has that helped you to like as you engage in new experience to kind of be proactive and responding
Yeah.
to that tendency?
Yeah. So that came much later.
Oh.
That came much later for me, because I realized that the the latest part of people pleasing for me was when I was running my own business, where I really did feel like I needed to say yes to everyone and everything because it was so much more public. right? And then you had
Yeah.
social media, and then you had Google reviews of people going like, I just asked for this one thing and they said no. So that sort of influenced the way I handled those situations. And what changed for me, what the shift for me was, again, in the way I was thinking in terms of value. And this time I placed worth and value in myself
Mm,
first. And
mm.
when you actually recognize what that means to you, and if you really truly believe that this is who you are, what you're capable of, how you'd like to extend yourself to others and be comfortable with that, your language automatically changes. You don't have to think twice about how am I going to tell this person? How am I going to have this argument? How am I going to have this conversation? How am I going to write this email? It doesn't, because it just flows, because you know for a fact that that's who you are.
Yeah.
So you're not apologizing anymore. You're not saying, I'm so sorry, but I really don't think I can do this. Like it doesn't need to be that anymore.
Yeah. Profusely apologizing.
Profusely apologizing because you feel the guilt
Yeah.
of displeasing. And that's why it's a diseased please,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You
Yes.
feel it. You're like, oh my God, I feel so guilty about saying no, but I really can't. I really can't. I'm so sorry. Oh my God. Okay, you know what? Okay, just yes. Okay, I'm gonna say yes. This is just too much.
Yeah.
Like you go through that whirlwind of emotions. So for me, it was really finding out what I truly believed in terms of my capability, my capacity at the time, and not apologizing for it. Instead, saying, this is where I am right now. And it's transparency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not able to take this on at this point.
Yeah. You keep coming back to values, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is the foundational piece here of our conversation, which helps us and everyone who's listening, who's a working mom, career mom, like knowing your values in every season of your life, because it shifts a little bit, but you have certain core foundational values that stick for the long term. But depending on your season of life, I'm hearing it's like when you are very clear on your own values and also knowing your own worth, that
That's it.
it helps to start releasing from the tendency of uh, making decisions and taking action that was based on people pleasing. Like you start releasing from that because it's not aligning with your values.
Yes,
That
that's one part of it. The second part is actually what you're valuing,
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
right?
Do
So
more.
what are you valuing? Are you valuing, like, how are you putting value on the transaction that's happening right now of that people pleasing?
Hmm.
What value does that hold?
Yeah.
And how does that speak to your actual inner values?
Ooh,
So
love that.
putting the values of on others, going like, I need for me to be seen as valued, I need to say yes to you.
Mm,
So it's kind of like it's a two-parter, right? It's like you got to see that you are now putting a value on the transaction that's going to be happening, and you're looking for that external validation to then counter your worth.
mm.
So
That
then you have to ask yourself, why is that?
Why is that? Yeah. Why am I using this
Seeking,
transaction to seek that?
yes. Why am I seeking this value outside of myself?
Mm, yeah.
What part of that is lacking inside of me that I can't show up in my worth?
Ooh, that's digging deep.
Mm, yeah, I felt that too. Sudden gush of like hot blood rushing into my face through my heart.
We're digging deep here, folks.
Yeah. So I think that's where and that's why she calls it the disease. In my opinion, that's where it is, because it's so deep, and sometimes it can be a confusing web of so many entangled emotions, and how do you untangle that to then understand why you're doing it over and over again.
Yeah. You know what's interesting is I noticed that in also my parenting and how I
Mm.
engage with my kids. Like, when they ask you for something and
Yep.
I just want to say yes because I don't want them to be mad at me, right? Like,
Mm.
and so I'm starting to notice that in how I parent my kids, and it's like, oh, like what am I teaching here? What am I modeling here for my kids, right?
Yeah,
Do you find that, or have you experienced that as a mom?
I have. Yeah, the fact that I do want I would like my kid to like me.
Yeah.
I would like him not to think that I'm, like a dinosaur who doesn't understand anything that's going on in his world.
Yeah.
But the most recent interaction where I had to kind of swallow this pill of like, it's okay if he doesn't like me, but this is something that he needs to do was it was actually really tricky because I think what happened was that I talked him to death. Like I talked so much until he was so tired that he gave in. So I'm still examining that. But what I realized is that again, if you talk to them and not talk down to them,
Mm-hmm.
that makes a little bit of a difference, I find.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they understand way more than we give them credit for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's also just a fact of telling them why you feel the same way we need them to justify some of the things that they ask for. I will now justify some of the things that I would like for him to either attend or do or be present about. And one of them was go to work with your parent day. So,
Yeah.
he's grade 9 and
Mhm.
we both work from home.
Mhm.
And so he thought it was a holiday. Right? My husband works on Eastern time. So that means that his day, his one of his earliest meetings starts at 6 in the morning for us.
Mhm.
So Kieran doesn't actually get up at 6 in the morning. So he didn't think he needed to because he said, all I need to do is interview you.
Mhm.
So the way I had to explain this, and he didn't like it.
Yeah.
So I had to let go of the expectation of like, I need my kid to like me.
Mhm.
So I'm going to be doing what will please him, which is let him sleep in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And try to figure out how else I can explain this to him to honor the fact that when you go to work with your parent, that means that you need to sit in their shoes for a day to understand what is it that their day looks like. And if it means that you need to get up at 6 in the morning to attend a meeting, I said, and the good thing is that you can do it in your PJs, but you still have to do this. And
Yeah.
so he was not happy.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
quite displeased with the whole thing. And I had to, I really had to justify why I thought this was important to
Mm.
try and win him over. Finally, I won him over with food. But I had to constantly think about how uncomfortable it made me feel
Mhm.
about not being liked.
Yeah, I was just
I
thinking
I could
that.
have given I could have given in.
Yeah.
I'd be like, "Oh, okay, okay. Do you want to sleep in? Like that's okay." And then he'd be like, "Oh, mom, I can love you."
Yeah.
But it was for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. That I was just thinking, I was like, it's sitting in the discomfort
Yeah.
again, right? For not just you, but also allowing your kid to sit in the discomfort.
Yes, and
Mm.
it's really hard to
It's
see.
it's really hard to see.
Oh,
It's
it's hard to
really
see. It's hard to experience because their face is all contorted and they're like, what is going on? Why is she on my case about this? I don't understand. Like, and for him to process that while
Mhm.
you're there also trying to navigate this zone of complete discomfort, but
Comfort.
again, with communication and full transparency
Yeah.
as to why I thought it was important. It wasn't about the assignment. Maybe the assignment wasn't even that deep. But to me, it was also him experiencing a sense of gratitude for what we do. Just because we work at home does not mean it's not work.
Yeah.
There are sacrifices that need to be made. There are things that you do in every job that it's sometimes not, everything's not a hip, hip, hooray, I get to do this all day. Right? Admin tasks. Like, who wants to do admin tasks?
Yes.
So that's where you got to check your people
Mhm.
pleasing as a mom. For me, that's where I
Yeah.
got to check it, because I'm like, seeing him in that discomfort, all I wanted to do was like, you know what? Can we just like stop? Like, just, have some ice cream and just be happy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh,
I
I
don't want
have
to be the favorite parent again, please.
yes, I I have so many of those moments. So many of those because I just want to avoid because it is hard to
Avoid.
yeah,
Exactly.
you just want
Yes.
to avoid because it's sitting in that discomfort is
Yes.
so difficult, not just for yourself, but when you have your own kid who's across from you and you notice that they're having to sit in the discomfort because you're having to explicitly communicate why this is a boundary or for us my preteen is asking for a phone
Mm-hmm.
and that is part of my people pleasing is like, oh, I want it so you fit in. It's coming to going
Yes.
back to belonging, right?
Right.
That
Yes.
you fit in with all the other people kids who have phones
Yeah.
already at
Yeah.
11 and 12, so it's one of those like that's where I noticed that the people pleasing part of like
Mm.
because I want this for my daughter and I also want this for me. It's like two-parter, right? I want to feel like I'm a cool mom and my daughter's not
Yes.
going to despise me and say, my mom is super strict,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And also the other thing is like, I just want my daughter to fit in, right? And
Yeah.
right, like, but it's still a continuing conversation, so hard.
That's
And
what it is. It's
yeah.
continuing conversations, Jocelyn. You
Mhm,
just kind of, yeah, you put that so well. At the end of the day, same. I too want him to fit in. He's a minority in his school,
mhm,
underrepresented, however you want to call it these days.
mhm,
But we do live in a very immigrant heavy neighborhood, which to me I'm very grateful for, because he gets to see so much. He gets to see so many different cultures. He gets to see um, and benefit from different points of view, and how these guys are functioning together in the school. However, they're still in Canada, so the iPhones and the iPads and the
mhm,
watches, all of, the shoes, all the cool things are still very prevalent, right?
mhm.
And you're right. Part of you is thinking like, what can I do to make your life easier?
Oh, ooh, that's that one just like
Right?
yeah. Uh-huh.
So I get that. And again, it's about the conversations. You're right.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could, because I know that there are working moms listening to this podcast, like I'm hearing in our conversation here is one, like having awareness of this disease to please and people pleasing that
Mhm.
is, you know, prevalent in many of us, right? What would you say if you could give a coaching tip or advice of how to start, releasing from that tendency?
The big thing that comes up for me in this is knowing your worth
Mm,
and the capacity you have in trying to figure out what this actually means to you.
mm, yeah, yeah.
I feel
So,
so much of this is connected to what we feel our worth is. Because at the end of the day, when we're trying to please people, like, really, what is it that we're trying to do?
yeah.
Why do we feel that pull?
Mhm. Yeah. And that answer is going to be different for each person.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. But start with trying to figure out what is it that what is it that you feel you need from the outside to fill in those gaps of worth
Yeah.
inside.
That
Yeah.
is powerful. If you're listening, rewind and listen to that again.
Because I think for me, it was also exhaustion, like just exhaustion from saying yes to everything and everybody. As soon as I figured out that I am not everything to everyone, but what I can do is be something to someone.
Ooh, that is everyone tweet that part. I feel like I'm being Oprah. Tweet
Yeah,
that part.
but it's true, Jocelyn. Like the
It is.
minute I realized that, things just stopped being so overwhelming.
Did you feel that you had more energy and time because instead of spending that time and pleasing other people, you regained that
Yes.
energy for yourself
Oh,
and that time?
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that one thing you said, about how that kind of shift happened with the acceptance for me of being something to someone,
Mm.
it it really released the fact that I didn't have to be everything to everyone, therefore didn't have to please everyone, therefore the people I could be something to got me wholly, like they got me as a whole
Yeah.
rather than just a sliver, because I was just slicing and dicing myself to try and be in every pocket.
Yeah. That's a great visual. I mean, kind of morbid, but great
Yeah,
visual. It's like,
that's what it felt like,
yeah,
right? It was
just
just like, oh my God, take a piece of me, take a piece of me.
yeah, instead of giving your whole self
Yeah,
so fully present. And yeah. Mm.
fully present. Yeah.
That I love that. That's a great way to like just nicely wrap up our conversation here around the disease to please and people pleasing. Like, I really appreciate just how you shared what is one way for us as working moms and career moms that are, we're trying to blend our work and, being that present parent and raising our kids, right? Like, the one thing that you can ask yourself is, what are you seeking in terms of your worth outside of you that's, that you're trying to fill that's inside.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then your visual, like, you can't be everything to everyone, but you can be something to someone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then bring your whole self into that, right? Because you
Mhm.
you are more present automatically when you cut down from 500 to 5.
Yeah.
You are more present in those 5 things.
Yeah.
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 And for moms too, like, girl, it's about capacity. At the end of the day,
Let's be real here, everyone.
let's be real. And we're not getting any younger. We are the youngest version of ourselves today. I get
Mhm.
that. But tomorrow, I'll be older. There will be a new ache
Yes.
and a new pain of some sort.
I'm so sorry. Yeah.
So I am really very aware now of my capacity and how I can function, where I can function, and be so intentional about what I actually say yes to.
Yeah.
Choosing what you say yes to. And it's also part of self-empowerment.
Mhm. Mhm. Way to tie it
I
into
wish,
the
yeah,
podcast name.
that's that was very intentional,
Very,
people.
very Shobna. That was so great. I, should have paid you for that one. I love
Oh my
that
God.
because you are bringing back what we said early in the conversation, what you value and your values.
Yes, yes.
Ding, ding, ding.
100%. If people could see us right now. Yes.
We are pointing at
I'm
each other.
pointing at each other. Yes.
Welcome to our conversations, everyone.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's just because I'll share something that I've learned for myself. Coming back to that concept of
Mm,
like knowing what you value and your values,
mhm.
right? Being something for someone versus everything for everyone is to allow myself more time before I make a decision. Because
Oh,
my tendency with the people pleasing say yes right away. because
Yes.
I feel the energy of it. I feel the energy of the person. I just like the person, or I just want to say yes because I don't want to see the disappointment in the face right then.
Mhm.
And for me, at least, I will say, let me get back to you. And that allows me more time to really come back to what am I valuing here and what are my values?
The empowerment to step back and reflect,
Oh my gosh, yes.
right?
It's so hard to do that in this
It
fast-paced
really
world.
is. It really is. But you know what? You're absolutely right. When you actually take a breather,
Mhm.
you see that question or that ask of you in a whole new light.
Yeah.
Yeah, instead of being like the trigger response, right?
Trigger response.
Expecting you to respond like right now, respond to the text right now, email right now, within the hour, like go.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's such a real thing
Yeah.
as a working mom. That's totally such a real thing. It's I think I will say this, but I don't believe it. I think
Mm,
it's like it's hard to allow yourself that space,
it
but
is.
also it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't
Yeah, but
have-
you know what? Here you go. Here's a tip.
Okay.
Actually, when you do get an ask, when you brought up self-awareness, so you're aware now that there's an ask being put in front of you,
Mhm.
breathe.
Oh, that's really easy and simple. We can
Yeah,
make it
just
simple,
breathe.
everyone. Just breathe.
Because when sometimes what I find too, when you brought that up was when someone says, and as the trigger response is the fact that you have taken in an inhale, you're not holding your breath. You haven't exhaled yet. You're like, someone's asked something of me, and then you hold it, and then you're like, okay, I gotta respond right now. And then when you're responding, you're like, oh, okay, I'll do it.
Oh, so
Right?
true. Yeah.
But if you just take a step back and just breathe, like 3 or 4 breaths even,
Mhm.
you're
Yeah.
already regulating whatever emotion that has come up for that ask. It can be
Mm.
a good emotion, bad emotion, ugly emotion, who knows? But you're already in the process of regulating how you feel about that ask just
Ooh.
by taking a few breaths. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be big box breathing, like all this somatic practices that we do. But if you're in a hurry, if you see a text somewhere and you're like, on your way to pick up your kid and someone's asked you of something, just breathe.
Yeah. Just breathe. Breathe, and then when you have time, dig deep.
Yeah, yeah. And then you have time to dig deep. But that will automatically slow you down from just
Mm.
having that trigger response. So try that switch, see what it feels like, and see what's coming up for you.
Yeah.
You do that. Yeah, self-awareness, right?
Yeah.
Leads to
Yeah.
self-empowerment.
Ooh. I feel like I need to have some, like, special music for that one.
Yes. You're the expert at that. I can't wait.
So, oh my goodness, I have loved this conversation. I feel like we scratched the surface and we also dug deep.
Yeah,
And there's so
like a
many
roller
like
coaster.
golden nuggets here. I mean, like I'll share just things that really stuck out to me is like knowing your value, knowing your values, right? I love your metaphors, like you can be something to someone.
Mm.
Yeah. And what are your takeaways of what of our conversation today for yourself?
My takeaways here are there will be a time where you think you've got it all figured out,
Mhm.
and then suddenly something will happen that
Mhm.
that questions that, and be open about it.
Mm.
It's okay. Be curious. Have
Yeah.
some compassion towards yourself.
Yeah.
So when you were telling me all of those, the triggers or the way that we want to please, and even for our kids, and this is the real test, I think, for moms. The fact that sometimes we do feel like we got it all figured out, and then it's like, boom, something else happens. And
You're
you're
like,
like, what?
what just happened? Damn it.
What just happened? So my one of my takeaways was that when you said, the fact that sometimes we feel like we want our kids to belong, it's easier for us to please them and do that. So for me, that was a sign of we have to take care of ourselves. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Practice some self-compassion there, some self-care, because we are all learning creatures. We are going about this the best way we know how. And we might not be the best parent every single time. And that's also okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And that self-care, I'm glad you brought up that self-care is that breath that you just talked about earlier.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
that one breath is a form of self-care. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very simple. Well,
You
thank
got this. You got this.
Yes, we've got this, everyone. We're dancing here. Well, Shobna, how can people connect with you in the ethers?
Ethers, yes.
In the
Well,
ethers.
I am on LinkedIn, and I suppose Instagram. You can
Yeah.
find me at soirette.coaching. If you want to follow, foodie, pastry sort of adventures, I'm on Love Soirette, and that's how they can find me. Yeah. And connect.
And
I love talking about everything: food,
yeah.
culture, silliness, doesn't matter.
And if you are a podcast listener, Shobna also has her own podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about that too? If
Sure, yes, you're so sweet at like advocating for this. I completely forgot. Um, I have a little podcast actually inspired by Jocelyn, because we were talking one day, and I was telling her about it, and she was just you're such a champion. Seriously, you were just like, do it, do it, do it.
I was like, do it.
It's called Color Me Brave, and I talk about similar things, but really just about what you need to do to be true to yourself. So I think we
Mm,
talk about entrepreneurship. I bring on a few guests, a lot of guests actually, who are my friends and people who I admire, respect, and just amplifying voices, sorry, for women of color.
yeah.
So that's the space I love to be in. I love to talk about their their journey, how they've released from their own cultural conditionings, because a lot of them have taken the less glamorous path of entrepreneurship compared to the stigma of wanting to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, accountant, teacher, and 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 how they do it with their kids and family, and sometimes just even immigrant life, right? So it's a good space to feel like you belong and just
Mm.
have that sense of community. And
Well,
and Jocelyn's been on it.
oh yes, thank you.
Yes.
Well, that is amazing. So if you are listening and you identify as a mom of color, working mom of color, career mom of color, go ahead and check Shobna's podcast out. It's so fun.
Thanks, Jay.
Listen,
Yeah,
and
it is. It's cute.
yeah. So
Happy.
thank you so much for being here on the podcast again. It was always such a fun time to have conversation about topics that are like, ooh, let's dive into this disease to please and people
Same.
pleasing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jocelyn. We could go on, but
I know we would actually go on
we
more,
would.
but
Yeah. But thank you so much for having me. It's always such a pleasure. And you really do bring out, the best in how we can frame this for our listeners, and how we can frame this for working moms out there, and just, sharing our growth with them. And so thank you for having me and for this amazing space.
oh, you're welcome. Thank you for sharing your spirit with us.
My pleasure.
Bye, everyone. Hey there, I hope you enjoyed listening in to that conversation between Shobna and I about disease to please. Here are the takeaways from today's conversation. 1. Choosing what you say yes to is an act of self-empowerment. 2. Healing and releasing from the disease to please begins with awareness of this subconscious tendency and programming. 3. Grounding in your values, your worth, and what you value helps you release from the tendency to people please. 4. You can't be everything to everyone, but you can be something to someone. 5. Releasing and healing from the disease to please requires you to be comfortable with the discomfort that arises. 6. Allow yourself time by taking a pause to breathe as a practice to respond from your values and worth versus responding from a triggered people-pleasing behavior. And 7, stay open and compassionate to yourself in this journey of healing and releasing from the disease to please. And here are 2 coaching questions to help you reflect on today's conversation. 1, what situations trigger your subconscious tendency to please others? What is it that you are seeking from pleasing others? And 2, why are you seeking value outside of yourself? What part of that is lacking inside of you that you can show up in your worth? Once again, thanks for tuning in into the Empowered Working Mom Revolution podcast. If you found today's conversation super helpful in guiding you as a working mom, I'd love to invite you to share it with a fellow working mom friend, as we would love for this podcast to serve as many working moms. So thanks for sharing it with a working mom friend, and I'll see y'all next week on the podcast. Have a great rest of your day, week, weekend, and evening. Bye.